to the Metro on 1019 WDET FM, Detroit Public Radio. I'm Tia Graham. Now, how are Democrats supposed to be responding to the Trump administration's tariffs? That's what many in the political world are thinking about right now, especially those in Michigan. That's because auto suppliers are concerned that Trump's tariffs will devastate their businesses, and automakers worry that they'll drive up the cost of cars and reduce sales. In this state, that matters, as the auto industry makes up about 20% of our economy. After tariffs went into effect in early April, Stellantis temporarily laid off about 900 workers in Michigan and in Indiana who supply auto parts to factories in Canada and Mexico. It's in this context that last week, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer visited the White House to meet with the president. And yesterday, she spoke at an event held by the Detroit Economic Club. While there, she highlighted the need for economic certainty. She said she met with the president to ensure that she gets federal help to get power restored in northern Michigan after the state experienced an ice storm in late March. To talk a little bit more about what the governor has been up to, we have WDET reporter Bre'Anna Tinsley here with us. Bre'Anna, welcome back to the Metro.
Good morning. Glad to be back.
And so last week, Governor Whitmer spoke with President Donald Trump. She earned praise from the president, who was once criticizing her during his presidency, calling her that woman from Michigan. So, based on what you've reported on, what she said at yesterday's economic event, what are the relations between her and the president right now?
Honestly, they seem to be cordial at the moment, but Whitmer didn't speak much at the DEC about her relationship with the president nor his policies.
Which is, okay. So before Governor Whitmer met with Trump last week, she gave an address near the White House criticizing the president's tariff policies, but agreeing with his support for domestic manufacturing. At yesterday's economic event in Detroit, when she asked about why she went to speak with President Trump, she had this to say.
We have 5,500 Michiganders who are on day 15 of not having power. These are Michigan residents who are hurting, who are in rural parts of the state and have very small providers. That's the whole reason I was there. People say, why were you there? That's why.
So why did the governor say she was at the White House, and did reporters make up her response?
Well, people were surprised to see her there, obviously. I mean, especially shortly after criticizing the president's tariffs. But I mean, she said, she was there intended to meet with Trump to try and get that federal declaration of emergency for northern Michigan. As we know, severe ice storms hit Michigan a little over 2 weeks ago, when many homes have been without power for over 15 days. I mean, she was also there to try and secure new jets for Selfridge Air National Guard in Macomb. But, that's pretty much all she really said about that.
Yeah. It's just been interesting to see some of the photos coming out, which we're going to get into a little bit later, of her visit to the White House. But yesterday, President Trump said he was considering making exemptions for tariffs that could impact America's auto industry. Do you think that Whitmer going to the White House had any impact on what he said?
As far as we know, she didn't discuss any tariffs with the president. Perhaps her remarks beforehand had an impact, but there was no mention from her about that at the DEC meeting.
And this is the Metro. I'm Tia Graham. We're talking about the recent activity of Governor Gretchen Whitmer, why she met with the president last week, and what she said yesterday at an economic event in Detroit. Our guest is WDET reporter Bre'Anna Tinsley, who covered yesterday's event. So, Bre'Anna, let's get into what the governor was actually speaking about at the economic conference yesterday. She spoke about the theme of certainty. Here is a cut of her talking just about that.
To make stuff in America, we need a coordinated long-term industrial policy. We've done this before. When we entered World War II, we didn't have the capacity to fight a two-front war, both in Europe and in the Pacific, let alone win either one of them. So what we did was we built the arsenal of democracy here in Michigan. It was the most successful collaboration between government and industry and workers ever.
So how does she want to help the Tier 1 and Tier 2 auto suppliers?
Essentially by bringing more manufacturing jobs back to the U.S. and obviously Michigan, but also boosting the skilled workforce and to fill those jobs. And by doing this, by finding money from the government. She also mentioned finding money for these businesses to help them transition to using materials sourced in the U.S. instead of across the seas. She gave an example of a small manufacturer in Farmington Hills that makes traditional auto equipment and has plans to make electric motors, and they plan to move away from using rare earth materials that can only get from China, but the business is going to need help from the government to make that kind of shift. Another business in the UP that makes small metal fobs is diversifying their product line, but they'll need help retooling and scaling the business so they can meet the demand. And these are things the governor believes the government can assist with financially.
And, just hearing you talk about the suppliers, the small suppliers, especially in the state of Michigan. My sister works at some of those, and she has for the last 20 plus years, and you can see the fluctuations and you can see how the tariffs are impacting the work already. So it's something that I'm definitely interested in following along because of course, the personal stake here. But one implication is that Governor Whitmer is talking about this because auto suppliers are scared right now because of the tariffs. Did she mention Trump's tariffs at all when discussing helping out the auto suppliers?
Yeah, she did say that the tariffs are putting a strain on these businesses, and they're going to need all the help that they can get to make it through, which is why she called for sourcing federal dollars to help them not rely on materials that can only be sourced from overseas and to make their products here at home. And
she also spoke about developing more manufacturing jobs here.
We need to keep doubling down on advanced manufacturing now, because if we're honest, China is catching up. They are number one in shipbuilding. They're not far behind Boeing and Airbus when it comes to aviation. And in chips, electric vehicles, and batteries, they dominate where we used to. We can't afford to give up and to let them own the finish line.
Michigan has lost a lot of manufacturing jobs over the last 30 years. Most of those jobs have been lost due to technology and changes and new things that we see happening. How did she say she wants to increase manufacturing jobs in the state?
Yeah, so she wants to incentivize domestic manufacturing. A few years ago, there was a pitch to the federal government for a match program for these Tier 2 and Tier 3 auto suppliers so they can bring more jobs back to the U.S., but the Department of Energy rolled out a $50 million domestic manufacturing conversion program for these businesses, and Michigan won most of that funding, but the program right now is kind of in a limbo. Governor Whitmer has reached out to the Energy Secretary asking them to see, as she said, hold up their end of the bargain. She says if they use the money effectively to bring jobs back to the state, there could possibly be more funding from the DOE in the future.
And Whitmer also spoke about road funding. Here's what she had to say about it.
Rebuilding Michigan was always just a short-term fix for a long-term problem. We went the bond route because we could get to work, but it did not solve the problem. Just like the deals in 1997 and 2015, it's not enough. Our roads are still deteriorating faster than we can fix them. And experts calculate our annual shortfall is close to $4 billion. Soon, we're going to fall off the funding cliff of the bond plan.
And, just driving on those roads and feeling how bad they are does sound really bad. We don't have the funding to fix our roads. She's already tried and failed to raise taxes to fund the roads. So what does she say we need to do to fix them in the future?
Yeah, she says she and the legislature need to come to an agreement on a plan that can fully fund the roads. However, she stresses that shouldn't come by taking money away from public safety or housing plans or programs that help build the economy. Her words were, Michigan doesn't have the luxury of solving one problem at a time. They have to be able to fix all of these problems at the same time. But she is confident that an agreement can be reached soon.
WDET reporter Bre'Anna Tinsley, always keeping up with what's happening out there. Thank you so much for joining us on the Metro today.
Thank you.
Coming up, we will pay tribute to former WDET host and program director Judy Adams ahead of an event coming up this Saturday to memorialize her at the Garden Theater. This is WDET-FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation. Stay right there for the Metro. We'll be right back.